Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's able to get in. Some folks sent me a message and said that they couldn't see the post or the show yet, and I went and looked on Facebook, and I see that we we are broadcasting. I hope those technical difficulties have worked themselves out, and that everybody is able to see the show tonight. Now, tonight's show is going to be a little different, and I had told folks that occasionally I would venture off into state and national politics and such. So tonight's going to be one of those nights. Uh, I am going to venture off a little bit, and I'm going to talk about this past Tuesday's elections. But I am at some point going to bring that back to relative to what I think about Rockdale County politics in this coming primary season, and what that means. Because I mean, political issues are political issues. Uh, at the end of the day, no matter what political party or affiliation comes along when it comes about these elections. So, but I do want to dive into. I want to look at the Virginia elections a little bit. I do want to look at the aspect of what it could possibly mean for midterms as Republicans and Democrats face off against each other nationally. So, what I'd like to talk about is first, I'd like to talk about the Virginia governor's race. That was a very interesting race. You had former governor Terry McAuliffe running against Glenn Youngkin, a relatively unknown novice politician, businessman. Um, McAuliffe was the former governor of Virginia, also former chairman of of the Democratic National Committee. So you know he was a prominent Democrat, a prominent person in the National Party, a very prominent Virginian. Was known by everybody. Initially, when Youngkin began his race, I think he was polling like at 3 or 4% as far as name recognition back last year. So you've got a guy who was virtually unknown who was able to defeat a very popular former governor, former chairman of the Democrat National Party, and it goes to, I think, a wayward strategy and wayward policies that the Democrats are actually uh, implementing or attempting to implement on the American people at this point. I think when we look at Virginia and we look at what Youngkin ran on, Youngkin ran on issues that were local and they impacted Virginians, and he stayed off the national stage. Youngkin accepted his endorsement of by Donald Trump, but he didn't go around and hugging the president or having him come speak for him. He said, I accept the endorsement, but I'm going to run my own campaign and be my own man, and he did that. He ran on education, he ran on taxes, free speech, and gun rights. Uh, Under the previous governor, uh, gun rights, education, free speech, all those things had been under attack by Democrats, and they implemented their policies. They had, tried to implement strict gun regulations. Free speech was under attack, and Terry McAuliffe went so far as to say that parents had no right in what their kids were taught, that they had no right and no say in their education. And that's something that came back to bite Terry McAuliffe very hard. We also look at what happened. I think, Alex and I had talked about this many a time. Alex had talked about the pain that he felt Republicans were going to have to feel over under a Democrats rule. Well, one group individual who we had discussed that would feel that pain were white suburban women, um, because they were used to low gas prices, and they were used to uh, low prices on the shelves of the grocery stores when they went shopping. So, under the Biden administration, fuel prices were skyrocketed, and the shelves, when they are stocked, because we're also facing a supply chain issue right now. But when the shelves are stocked, grocery prices on those shelves, those items are skyrocketing also. And you were talking about people that want to go and eat out and do that. You have a lot of restaurants now that you can't go in and eat. You got to go through the drive. through, or you got to do takeout because there are not enough employees to actually work in those facilities. So, under the Democrats, they're not Democratic, it's Democrats. Under the Democrats, we have seen that uh, labor issues have happened, supply chain issues have happened, uh, energy independence went away within months of Joe Biden being sworn into office because of executive orders. So with these policies in place, and also another thing, the elitism that Democrats have practiced a few years, that they know better than you what you need, that they will tell you what you need, and we dare you contradict us because we know what you need better than you, and we're going to save you. And Virginia voters, you can tell by what they did, they voted back against that. Virginia was a 10-point Biden state in 20, 10 points. You had the Virginia governor flip, the lieutenant governor flip, the attorney general flip. You've got the Virginia uh, House of Delegates is going to flip from Democrat to Republican. And another thing is, one of the things that night, because I watched the news reports up into 2:30 in the morning, and you had Democrat pundits, Democrat former national officials, and the left wing media all saying that the election of Glenn Youngkin was a racial thing, that it was white supremacy. You had a state that elected a white male as governor, a black female as lieutenant governor, and a Hispanic male to attorney general, and you claim it was racist when the white male was running against the white male, the black female was running against a female Hispanic, and the female who's Hispanic who won was running against another white male incumbent attorney general who had served 2 terms and was going for his 3rd term as attorney general. So we want to talk about white supremacy. White supremacy only exists if Republicans win. When Republicans lose, white supremacy doesn't exist. But you had 2 white males in Virginia seeking election as Democrats. If those individuals would have won, you would have not heard the Democratic pundits say one thing about white supremacy. But you had a white male, a black female, and a Hispanic male win, and it's white supremacy. Guys, that only works in one direction. The Democrats have got to quit that nonsense and just tune into reality, because this is what they want you to do. They want people of color to feel that if you don't vote for the Democrats, that you're going to be discriminated against. And they also want whites to feel that if you vote for Republicans, that you're racist, that you're a white supremacist. Well, guys, that's hogwash. In Virginia, Glenn Youngkin ran on principle. He ran on education, taxes, free speech, and gun rights. Those are principles that most Americans actually agree on, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. What we have is when one party or the other shifts too far in one direction, that 30% in the center will do a correction. A lot of people don't want to hear that on either side of the aisle, Republicans or Democrats. But that's a true thing. If one party goes too extreme, one way or the other, then that 30% in the middle will make a course correction. Now, the Democrat has their progressive wing, which, in my opinion, is destroying that party, and they need to get them under control. The Republican Party a few years ago had their own issue with a wing of their party, which is the Tea Party, which I don't even know if they're a wing of the party or if they're just a group of individuals who've got their own party but realize they don't have the strength to do anything on their own. So they aligned and affiliated themselves with the Republican Party. I firmly feel you can only have one party within a party. And when you've got factions or individuals claiming that they're a party within a party, they're not doing anything but harming that political entity. Uh, I want to see, what did Lisa say here? Did anyone else notice that the New Jersey election results showed way down once Virginia race was called? I did notice that the New Jersey race, I think, is a different phenomenon. I think that the Virginia race, I think Republicans felt that they could be in that race all along. And I felt in New Jersey it was a different scenario, that Republicans believed the polling in New Jersey. They believed they were 11 and 12 points down. So they didn't spend money and they didn't surge at the end because they didn't spend money. They didn't think that they could win. But in fact, they were within the grasp of being able to win those elections. But I think it's where they didn't think they could win them, so they didn't spend the money and they didn't put those efforts in those last weeks. I mean, you had upsets in New Jersey. You had the second most powerful man in the state, the Democrat Senate leader, who was defeated by a Republican truck driver who had spent very little money in the election process, because he himself admitted he didn't think he had a chance, because he was looking at those poll numbers and saw the poll numbers and really didn't think there was much use of actually doing anything. So he didn't really, but he upset the Democrat Republican Senate president in an unprecedented victory for a novice politician who was a truck driver for a furniture chain. So it was amazing to see those things happen. It was amazing to see, what happened in Virginia. And do I think Democrats will learn a lesson from it? No. The next day, AOC doubles down and says the reason they lost is they didn't run progressive enough. Well, guys, that's not the reason uh, that they lost. And the reason they lost is because of their policies. Lisa, I see what you're saying, but I don't agree with that. There were just outstanding votes that weren't counted. I think you can look at the Republicans just believed a few weeks ago they didn't have a chance. They didn't spend the money. Didn't do, even the candidates themselves didn't think that they were going to come that close to winning. So I just think it was that kind of deal. Uh, in that situation. So I believe I believe that had nothing to do with it. That just Democrats did not perform well in New Jersey like Republicans thought they were going to perform. Republicans thought that Democrats were going to perform much better and they weren't going to waste resources, is what they thought. But if they would have known the polls were off like that, those last 2 or 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, they would have spent money, and you may have seen a different result in that New Jersey governor's race also. I think they'll go back and look at and analyze the numbers, see what they could have done, and realize, and they'll see where the polling was awry. And that's one of the things I think, with polling nowadays, it's not even 50-50 anymore. What polling can be. I mean, it's so erratic. It's who they poll, when they poll them, if they voted, not voted. Those things are very iffy. So polling is just something we can't trust. And I think if you're in one of these states, and I think you've got to run a race. I think especially in 22, you will see in these pivotal states, Republicans will spend money. They will run races. They will do everything that they think they can do to actually pull these races out. And here in Georgia, this week we've got our redistricting coming up. Last week, the Senate map moved out of committee. They had a vote on it, and on Tuesday they intend to vote and approved the Senate redistricting map for Georgia, which the map is gives a 33-23 advantage to Republican senators at this point. I know a lot of people are not actually happy with that map because they feel that the Republicans weren't aggressive enough in drawing those maps. And if there are any of my Democrat friends watching the show tonight, I'm just going to tell you, Republicans have only been involved in the redistricting process in Georgia one time, 2010. Prior to that, Democrats had redistricted Georgia since the Civil War, and they were very heavy-handed in their drawing the maps, and they never gave up ground, and they were very aggressive in drawing the maps in their favor. And it's one of the things that I've discussed, and many Republicans have discussed. We don't feel that Republicans are aggressive enough when it comes to drawing the maps. And one of the reasons I don't feel they're aggressive enough is I question how many real Republicans are serving as Republicans, because we've had, I think, so many people switch party, but they didn't switch ideology. They just switched R&D. So they're, I think they sabotage the Republican Party from within because their ideology doesn't truly match up with the conservative philosophies of the Republican Party, and even the moderate conservative policies. I mean, the moderate policies that Republicans have, because we believe we have too many Democrats that are elected, too many Republicans who are elected to the Georgia state legislature who are actually liberal and left leaning. So I think that it's up to us as Republican voters, Republican members of the Republican Party, to stand up, weed these guys out, and call them out on their hypocrisy. We need to let them know you guys are not really Democrat. I mean, Republicans, you're Democrats. You're just put an R beside your name to get elected because one of the largest consulting firms in the state of Georgia had advised Democrats to do that over the last decade. In my opinion, we have a Democrat running for governor under the ruse of being a Republican, and that's Vernon Jones. He's got somewhat of a conservative stance on gun rights, but I know a lot of Democrats who believe in owning guns. I come from a state that was at one time a Democrat state, but everybody in that state believes in the right to bear arms, and that's even like people who still say they're a Democrat in West Virginia. So I do not think that someone supporting gun rights is a good litmus test to what party they belong to or affiliate. I was at an event down in Perry a few months ago, and Vernon Jones' campaign staff was going around telling people, which I personally heard this, he was the most pro-life candidate running. And that's an outright exaggeration and non-truth. He is not the most conservative pro-life candidate running. In fact, I was at a meeting that he actually said that he knew the truth about Planned Parenthood, but still felt they do good. Planned Parenthood does no good. There's nothing about planning parenthood with Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is an abortion organization, and that's what they do. They abort unborn babies. That's all they do. They do nothing else. That's all they finance, all they do. And yet he makes the statement they still do good work. No, they don't do good work. They do horrible work. That's my opinion, guys. I mean, this is probably a show. A lot of people are going to get mad at me if they're on the left side, but I have pre-warned people that sometime I'm going to talk national and state issues. And when I do that, it's going to be clearly partisan in those matters when I talk national politics, because I do not hide who I am, and I do not hide my party affiliation. I think there is a difference between national politics, state politics, and local politics. And I think on the local level, like here in Rockdale County, we've got to be concerned about taxes. We've got to be concerned about what's going on Yeah, the tickets are actually, the tickets are actually on sale now. I've not sent an email out yet because I don't till the like the third week or 2 weeks out. But I will be sending an email out Monday, which is tomorrow, about the tickets being available and where to purchase them at. But you can go to the Republican Party website now and purchase tickets to that event for November the 20th. But I feel that tax issues and education are big issues for Rockdale County. And I don't consider those partisan issues. I consider those issues that impact Democrats, Republicans, and and independents or nonpartisans. If we don't um, realize that just electing the same people over and over to these local offices, we can look at the impact it has had on Rockdale County. We can look at what has happened with electing Oz Nesbitt to uh, 2 terms as a post commissioner and 2 terms as a chairman. We can look at what's happened by electing Doreen Williams to 2 terms as a post commissioner. We can look at what's happened by electing Sherry Washington to 2 terms as a commissioner. It has not been helpful to the citizens of Rockdale County at all. These individuals have been taxed and spend. They have actually been tax you to death and spend people. So, here in Rockdale County, you know, a lot of times we're not going to have the choice but to vote for Democrats because that's what's on the ticket. But you don't have to elect the same person over and over again. I'm not one of the folks that believe, well, we know what we got, so let's just stay with it. Um, I think that we need to change our politicians like we do our underwear on a daily basis. And we keep changing them until we get the ones we like and the ones who do what we want, because we live in a country where we have representative government. And what representative government is just what it sounds like, representative government. We have people, citizens who come forward, they put themselves out there, they run for office. They run for office to represent an electorate. They run for office to represent the will of the people, not to impose their will upon the people. And in the last few years and the last decade, in my opinion, the Democrat Party has gone too far of imposing their will on the people. Uh, and I'm not going to say that the Republican Party doesn't do the same, but I think the Democrats have taken it a notch up. And I think that when we elect any politicians, that if those politicians continue to not represent our needs and our desires, then those politicians need to go. Well, it was just in the meeting, I think last week, we had them start talking about the courthouse again, about the leaky roof, another part of the leaky roof. When I had thought they just spent significant amount of dollars repairing the roof, and then they started talking about the building being built in 1939, and the movie industry liked it. I think that's how the conversation became. But then you're talking about the same board of commission who had recommended that we start up an authority, a facilities authority, that they were going to use to actually get the funds and finance a government building, aka courthouse facility. Well, I've done a little research and I've talked to people in the legislature about a facilities authority. In Henry County, they created a facilities authority not long ago, a few years ago, and they built an amphitheater. An amphitheater is the ideal type of facility that you would use an authority's facility for, because it is a facility that generates revenue that would be able to pay for revenue bonds. A government facility, aka courthouse, would not generate funds to pay for bonds. So the bonds would come out, they would be directly attached to M&O. So they would be in the county budget. They would be a fixed payments in the budget. So where would this money come from? This money would come from an increase in your and my taxes so that they would be able to afford that payment, because they're telling you, well, we'll do this authority, and under this authority, we may be able to have you not raise your taxes, and we may use some SPOS funds. Well, there shouldn't be a we may use SPOS funds. It should be we will definitely use SPOS funds to finance any type of government facility or government building that is built, because that is specifically the reason that the SPOS was created, was to do projects like that, a courthouse, a jail, or any other kind of building that a county government would need. That's what the SPLOST is for. But we did incorporate other things that could be done with the SPLOST. You can do fire engines, you can do fire police cars, you can do vests and guns and these kind of things. But the intent when this legislation was drawn was those would be secondary items that would be done when we didn't have big ticket items that needed to be funded from the SPLOST. But as usual, county governments have got used to SPLOST money being subsidized for M&O. So the SPLOST monies are being subsidized. They subsidize our M&O. They are not the additional funds they were intended to be to do things that go above and beyond the M&O budget. So as taxpayers, we've got to realize that our county officials and local government will not hold themselves accountable. It's up to you and I, the citizens of Rockdale County, to hold these individuals accountable. And this comes back to just like we talked about the Virginia elections. Voters held elected officials accountable. They held them accountable, and they held their policies accountable. We have a group of county officials who have a failed policy in Rockdale County. And I'm even going to go with the city now, because I'm usually a supporter of things the city does. But I have not been a supporter of the city and their high density apartments and townhouses as of late. When I moved to Rockdale County, one of the reasons I decided to come to Rockdale County because I like the rural atmosphere. I like that Rockdale County was a place that you could raise a family and you could get a good education for your children. I like the fact that Rockdale County was low key and the crime was down. With high density housing, those things come. That's just fact, folk. It's just fact. With high density housing, you don't keep the sleepy neighborhood you once had. You have what we're beginning to get. So I urge the voters of Rockdale County to actually say, I moved to Rockdale County because I wanted this type of life. We need to reach out to our elected officials and say, stop the high density housing, stop the apartments, stop the townhomes. We want Rockdale County to be a single family dwelling county. We want this to be a place that we feel comfortable living in and we feel safe living in. It's time that we, the voters of Rockdale County, take our county back. And if that means that we don't elect Doreen Williams in the next election, then we don't elect Doreen Williams. Because I personally feel that Doreen Williams is dangerous for Rockdale County. I think that her incompetence that she appears to do is a big act so that she goes under the radar and can do what she wants. I feel that the citizens of Rockdale County deserve better than a one issue candidate who hasn't even been effective on that one issue. Bill Campbell just made an excellent point. High density housing does not equal economic development. And that's what the city and the county both sell: apartments and townhomes as. They sell it as economic development. And it's actually economic destruction. It is not economic development. It is economic destruction, and it is the destruction of a community. You'll have heard the chairman say, "This ain't Mayberry no more." Well, I like Mayberry, and I like to have Mayberry back. And, and one of the things that we're going to look at next year is we're going to have people running for the Board of Education next year also. We need to have people of strong values that believe parents should be involved in what goes on in the educational system. You'll have this board say they can't talk about this or they can't talk about that. If you look under the Georgia statute of Board of Education members, they can only not talk about things that have happened in executive meeting. Actually, Georgia law clearly states that there will be no ethics rule or no internal rules made that prohibit any member from discussing things that have been discussed in open forum. So we got to watch this, guys. We've got to make sure we've got to go to these meetings and bring things up in open forum, because this Board of Education likes to sneak off to executive committee and discuss things where they're protected. And anything they say in executive committee, if a board member talks about that, they can be suspended from the board. So that's why they like to talk about the superintendent's contract in executive committee. But the superintendent's contract you can get through an ORR. It is subject to open records requests. So that should be discussed in the public, because it's something that is subject to an ORR. You can get that, you can read it yourself. So anything that is subject and the public can get, they need to talk about in public and stop going to executive session and hiding so that they don't have to talk about it and the state law protects them. It's a loophole that they found themselves. And during my stringent research, I have found no statute in Georgia law that states that a board member can't visit a school. I have found no Georgia statute that says a Board of Education member can't visit a local school. So I want to see where this is and how they feel that this is. And I have heard, which I don't know, and I want to look at it, this is something in the superintendent's contract. I feel strongly that we need to elect people to the Board of Education who will represent the taxpayers, the parents, and the students of Rockdale County. Now, you heard what I said, and I said this order clearly. The taxpayers, the parents, and the students. And nowhere in this should our Board of Education be representing or protecting the school superintendent. That is not their job. Their job is to represent those who elect them. Their job, once again, is to represent the taxpayers, parents, and students. If you represent the best interest of the taxpayers, then you will spend their money wisely, and you will approve a curriculum that will enhance education and give our children the best advantages that they can. If you allow parents to be involved and suggest what they want their children to learn, if you pay attention to the children, what skills they've got and what skills they don't. I mean, we need to start teaching life skills again to our kids. They need to be able to know how to fill out an application. They need to know how to apply for a driver's license. They need to make sure they know how to fill out college application. Because if you can't fill out a simple job application, you can't fill out a job application. And we've got to come to the realization that every student isn't meant to go to college. That college is not for every single student that's in the school system. So we are not doing those students justice when we gear this whole curriculum for students to enter college. We must realize there are good paying jobs that you work with your hands. We must realize there are good paying jobs that we can educate and prepare our children for that do not require them to go to college. We must realize there are good paying jobs that our kids can go to a technical school after high school for a couple of years, come out making $80,000 and $90,000 a year. And that's a reality. We've got to realize that these things are possible in Rockdale County, but they are only possible if we, the citizens, unite. We get behind the right candidates. We stop sending the same old people with the same old ideas back to those positions. We have to think outside of the box, and we have to elect outside of the box. Rockdale County, I have faith in you. I believe that the voters can and will make a difference next year. I believe the voters of Rockdale County will wake up. I believe that the spell that some of these politicians have put over these voters will wither away. I believe their days are numbered, and the citizens of Rockdale County are going to take back their county. That's what I believe, and that's what I'm waiting to see. This has been my week to report back to you these things that I think. And I told you guys, and I warned you, sometimes it's not going to be about the local things, that it's going to be some things like this. And we got a decent little audience right now. We lost some people. People come back. I'm sure that some people will be watching this tomorrow. It's probably going to be a really good viewed show after the fact, because local politicians are afraid of voices like mine, and they're afraid of voices like yours. They're afraid that, yes, the voters are going to be awoken by these messages, and that their days are numbered, and that you will take your county back. Thank you, everybody, for indulging me this evening. I look forward to coming here next week, and next week we will talk about the water. We'll talk about Rockdale taxes. We'll talk about all the things that I know you Rockdale County citizens love to hear. Next week will be a Rockdale County week. But thanks for indulging me and letting me have my week this week to rant and rave about things that I consider important. Thank you very much. See you next week.